I think there's some of my dogs here on my card, but you know what? This is the life I'm living right now. Bonjour everyone and welcome back to my channel, The Waves of Your Soul. My name is Maureen, I'm a French tarot reader and a lover of everything tarot, oracle and self-empowerment related. So if you would like to see any more of those things on your timeline, as well as getting regular videos around guidance, self-empowerment, everything tarot and oracle related, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out any of my future videos. And if you also want to get a lot more of that strong French accent, because you know there is nowhere for me to hide that accent. So today I'm very excited to be doing this video for you, which is gonna be a show and tell of my favorite mass market tarot decks. Now I had to pick 10 just for the purpose of this video not being 2 hours long. I have a lot of decks, so I had to make some kind of cut. These are going to be 10 of my favorite mass market decks. It was very hard to pick only 10, I'm not gonna lie, but I might do a part 2 at some point. If you enjoy this video, you can let me know in the comment. Today, I really wanted to choose 10 that would fit different categories. So what I've done is given a category for each of the decks that would correspond to different people. I'm gonna put all the categories with timestamps in the comment box, in the description box below, so you can check that out. And I'm also gonna tell you if I think that those decks can be beginner friendly or for people who know a little bit more about tarot. This is something that of course is based purely on my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with me, and I want to point out that I don't believe that there is a specific beginner deck. I believe that you can start reading tarot with any deck. However, I do believe that there are decks that make it easier than others to start reading the tarot, and this is what I want to share with you today as well. This is something I really wish when I started reading tarot that I wish people shared more of. So I'm sharing this in the spirit of being completely transparent and honest, but you don't have to agree with me, and you know, this is just my personal opinion. I will say though that this is my choice for right now. You know, humans, we have a fickle mind. If you don't know what a mass market deck is, a mass market deck means that you can find it in most of your bookstores, witchy shops, online retailers such as Amazon and Book Depository, compared to an independently published deck, which is usually produced directly by the artist. Those decks tend to be cheaper because they are mass produced, and so I wanted to share that with you today because they tend to be more accessible regardless of your budget. If you are interested though, I can share some of my favorite, 10 of my favorite indie tarot decks, and also class them in the little categories and tell you if I think they're beginner friendly or for more, you know, people or for more advanced readers. Let me know in the comment box below if that sounds like something that interests you. But for the purpose of today, we're going to be looking at mass market decks. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the first deck I wanted to share with you today is the Uncommon Tarot. And that is for all of my modern mystics out there. This is a category that I've called because this deck is a collage deck. So this will very much appeal to people who are, you know, very much into that modern art style. This deck is a very diverse deck. There is a representation from a lot of different ethnicities. There is age diversity, which is also fantastic. It's just a very beautiful tarot deck. This deck I would totally consider beginner friendly because it does follow quite, you know, closely the Rider-Waite-Smith system, which is mostly what all tarot books are based on, or at least a good portion of tarot learning books are based on the RWS or Rider-Waite-Smith system. So this is why I think this is beginner friendly. If you would like to start reading the tarot by learning the Thoth system or the Marseille, then this is obviously not going to be the deck for you. But if you are desiring to start from the RWS, then I do believe this is beginner friendly. This deck I find so gorgeous. I absolutely love the diversity in it. For me, it is one of the most diverse mass market decks in terms of all the different ethnicities that it depicts, and it does have a couple of animal cards, but it is mostly humans represented. This deck has a modern feel, but at the same time it feels very classic. It's the very good mix between collage of paintings, vintage pictures, as well as more modern artwork that I think makes this deck very, very special. A couple of the major arcana cards have been renamed, but nothing too crazy. And as you can see, the name of the suits are still wands, swords, etc. So here you can see the Hierophant is the wise one. But because you have the number of the major arcana cards, it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out what it is. Other than that, like I said, it pretty much follows the RWS system. This is one of my absolute all-time favorite decks. I love the Empress card, I love the Emperor card. They are both from ethnicities we don't often see. I find that we don't see a lot of Indian representation, or at least like South Asian representation in tarot, and I think that's a shame, so I very much appreciate this deck for that. It comes with a little guidebook, which is, you know, not huge, but gives you enough to start with. Overall, it's really beautiful. The one thing I don't enjoy about the deck is the backing. I think they're pretty ugly, if I'm completely honest. They just don't go together, right? Look at this, so colorful, so poppy, so much going on, and then you turn around and you're like, what happened? Did you run out of pictures? Like, tell me. Why am I like this? I don't know. The Lovers is a same-sex couple, or what looks to be like a same-sex couple, which I am so here for. So another, you know, layer of diversity here. Overall, this is such a solid deck for all of my modern mystics, and I think for any collage artwork fans, you would really enjoy this one. Okay, for my fantasy lovers out there, I believe this is what I've called this category. We have the Mermaid Tarot. Now I have edged this deck in blue, which actually I'm not the best deck modification person. Marine, you can't even speak English, can you? I'm not the best deck modder. Is that also English? Anyway, I'm not the best person at modifying decks. If you want to see beautiful modification, then you need to check out Boho Tarot's channel, because she does an amazing job. All I do is just edge. Sometimes I cut border very, very badly, and that's about it. But I thought that this kind of blue color was pretty cute. So the Mermaid Tarot is for all of my fantasy lovers. Actually comes in a very big guidebook, like a proper, you know, hardbound, well, you know, chunkier book, I would say. So this deck absolutely I would recommend for beginners, because it does give you quite a substantial meaning for all of the cards. It gives you spreads, and I think this is a very great beginners friendly deck. It does stick quite closely to the RWS system, and you know what, a lot of people tend to diss this deck, saying, oh, it's like a Disney looking deck, it looks very childish, it's not for me. I mean, I can't disagree about the fact that the images look quite like Disney, you know. However, don't diss this deck before you've tried it, because it goes a lot deeper than it looks. At first, I was the same. I was like, this deck looks a bit like gimmicky, you know. But actually, it is so clever. What I love about this deck particularly is that even though it is based in the you know, mermaid, ocean vibe. One, it still has ethnicity diversity, which I very much appreciate. This is something that if I can find in a mass market deck, I, you know, very appreciate, especially for fantasy related tarot decks. It's like fairy decks, and it looks like all white people, and I think it's a shame. So anyway, this one, I love the fact that each of the suits represent mermaids from different parts of the world. So the ones, tropical island vibe mermaids, and you know, they have volcanoes, and I love that specific suit because it very much relates to where I live right now. I live on a volcanic tropical island, so this speaks to me greatly. The swords are actually mermaids from like north waters, so maybe like Viking mermaids or mermaids from like, you know, Scandinavia and things like that. The cups are your regular everyday little mermaid Ariel vibe, the stories and folklore we're used to. And finally, pentacles are river mermaids, and we have fairies, and we have like, and they have like trout tails, and I think that's really cool. And some of the cards actually can pretty deep. Look at this death card. It actually depicts how we human can really fuck the world up, and it's pretty dire. Like, you see this kind of oil spill and the mermaids having to rescue all the animals, and it's pretty deep. Like, this is not Disney, you know, vibe to me. I really think this deck has more depth than what people give it credit for, and I think it would be a shame to discount it as just a gimmicky, cutesy deck because actually it is very cleverly constructed. And I like the fact that the more strong hitting cards are not washed with like sugar, sparkle and things like that. If you've watched any of my videos from the past, you know that I like a well-balanced deck. For me, it's very important to have light and shadow, so I appreciate the fact that they have not tried to, you know, tone down the heavier hitting cards. If you love the ocean, if you love mermaids or anything fantasy related. And this is the Mermaid Tarot. Okay, next up we have the deck for my history buffs out there. And of course, you know I had to shout out one French deck. I mean, come on, if you watched any of my past videos, you know, as a French person, I like to rep the French artists, the French creators. And this one is one that actually a lot of English people enjoy, and I'm so glad for good reason. It is a very good deck. And it is the Marseille Waite Tarot. So here are the backs. And this deck is for all of my history buffs because it is a medieval inspired tarot deck. Now, what most people don't know when they see this deck, and it is mass market, meaning you can find it on Amazon France. So this deck actually is very unique in the sense that the major arcana cards are Marseille major arcana cards, and the minor arcana is all inspired by the RWS. So this is why it's called the Marseille Waite. It's a mix between Marseille and the Rider-Waite-Smith. Now, what most people don't know, and what makes this deck so consistent, even though it does mix Marseille and RWS, is that the creators of this deck took months and months and months to go through French archives, to go through old grimoires, to go through old libraries, the medieval grimoires, all the old parchments, to find artwork for each of the cards that they could copy. So every single swords, every single dog, flower, cups, even down to the snails in the Nine of Pentacles, was an item that was already existing in old French grimoires, in old French parchments, even down to the postures of each of the characters, the horses, like everything is actually, you know, was already pre-existing in history. And this is why for me, this is a tarot for my history buffs out there. The only thing that they redrew are the faces, so that of course all the deck would be consistent. But if you think about the fact that most of the items were actually pre-existing in old books, I think that makes this deck so special, because there's been a real historical research behind the deck that took a lot of time, and I think the artists and creators should be celebrated for that. And I absolutely love this death card with the red blood background. Oh, it is so good. So this deck is absolutely stunning. The colors are beautiful. The fact that there's actual history research behind it makes it super special. The cardstock is an amazing linen style cardstock. So for a mass market deck, the cardstock is very beautiful, and even the backs are actually from an old French grimoire, from old French medieval drawing. So I think that's really cool as well, and I love those backs. They're one of my favorite backings. Next up we have what I call the everyday witch kind of category, and this is for all of my lovers of your modern kind of decks, everyday kind of, you know, the decks that you can use for everyone, even for people who are not so spiritually inclined. And it is, I'm sure as many of you know this one, the Light Seers Tarot. So I actually edge mine copy in black. It doesn't come edged like this. This is a mass market deck by Chris Ann, who also created the Muse Tarot, as well as another oracle that I don't have. And this deck is absolutely beautiful. It is totally beginner friendly. I don't think I said for the Marseille Waite, but I do believe it is, of course it's totally beginner friendly because it follows like most of the books that you'll find on tarot. So, you know, it's heavily inspired by Marseille and the RWS, so you could totally learn with the Marseille Waite. The Light Seers I find also very beginners friendly, even though some of the cards do their own thing in the sense that they root the tarot card in modern day. You still very much understand what is going on, and it still very much represents very well the essence of the tarot card. So in the Nine of Swords, even though you don't see someone crying at night with 9 swords on the background as you would see in traditional imagery, you still very much understand that this card is about anxiety, worry, despair, nightmares, etc., right? Like it does a really good job at that. The guidebook, even though it's like, you know, not a huge one, it's still very, very good. Chris-Anne has a wonderful way for writing, and so I think you could totally learn from the Lightseers. Very, very much love this deck. I love the bright colors. I love Chris-Anne's artwork, and this deck I have used so much. It is honestly one of my most used tarot deck. It's just one that I can pick up and I know for me it will work. Like it's one of those decks that I don't have to think a ton about. I can just take it, do whatever kind of reading with it, and it's always gonna deliver. You know, there are decks that you might use specifically for certain things, like maybe you just do past life readings with it, or maybe you just do spiritual or self-care reading. With my Lightseers, I have done absolutely every kind of reading possible, and it always delivered. So for me, this is a workhorse. I really appreciate it, and I think for a mass market deck, it's honestly really good quality. The cardstock is very good. It's quite thick, but not too thick that you can't shuffle it. What I love the most about this deck is that even people who don't know tarot, and people who are scared of tarot and who think like, you know, the devil is gonna come out to get them if they read the cards, they don't get scared with this deck because it doesn't have any of those kind of a very esoteric depiction or very like religious depiction. You know, it's just very rooted in modern day, and I feel like it makes people, even who are not spiritual, very chilled. They can relate to this deck. This deck is relatable, and for me, I really appreciate that, because not everyone wants to see the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and all of the esoteric symbol on their tarot cards, especially when you're reading for people who don't know about any of that stuff. So this one is great for for reading for others as well as for yourself, I think. Okay, so next category is actually for ancestral work, past life reading, all of that kind of, you know, more spiritual kind of readings. My favorite tarot, mass market tarot for this is actually called the Ancestral Path Tarot, and it is huge, like huge. If I compare it with the Lightseers, which is regular tarot card, you can see it's a chunky monkey. So this is something that can be difficult for people who have small hands or who have, you know, arthritis or anything like that. But if you can get past the massive size of it, it is a fantastic deck. I absolutely love this deck. I think it is one of the most beautiful mass market decks that you can get. The artist Julia Kuchia White has other indie decks. I have another one of hers which is all based around Egypt, but this one is actually divided in between different countries. So the staves or wands are based on Egyptian mythology, the swords are based on Japanese mythology, we have the cups that are based in Arthurian legends, you know, more like Celtic kind of mythology, and finally the pentacles are renamed sacred circles and they are based in a Native American mythology. And so this deck is very great for past life and ancestral work or anything like that, because everything is, you know, related in myth, in mythology, in stories. I think it's a great one for deep spiritual work. It's a great one for storytelling. This could also be a category for all of my creative writers out there, like if you want to write a story. So I might call my category ancestral work / past life / creative writing. So for me, this is honestly one of the most beautiful mass market tarot deck I own. I absolutely love this artist. Like I said, I have one of her indie decks that is only around Egyptian mythology. The one thing I don't enjoy about this deck is the fact that in the new version, which is the US game version that you can get right now, the guidebook is quite small, and so it doesn't go in depth into who each of the characters are. Like it will tell you who they are, but it won't go in depth. And I like to know. I'm a curious bitch, right? I'm like, tell me everything. I want to know who those people are. Like, tell me more about the myth. You have to do work on your own. You have to do your own research to actually, like, you know, find out more. It is still very beautiful. Do I think it's a beginner's deck? Like, would I pick this deck if I didn't know anything about tarot? Potentially not. I feel like this is a deck you might want to pick up once you've at least known a little bit about tarot. First of all, because the suits are renamed, which can be a little bit difficult. Second of all, because the iconography, the imagery, does veer away from the traditional imagery you will see in all of the tarot books, tarot podcasts, or tarot, whatever tools you use to learn the tarot. Look at this Judgment card. It is beautiful. I absolutely love it. But it does its own thing a little bit, right? It does require this deck for you to do some research, for you to meditate on the card, and for you to really expand your vision beyond just your traditional meaning. However, do I believe that this is a great deck to get after you've learned a little bit about tarot? Yes, because it will push you beyond your comfort zone. It will help you, especially to learn about court cards, because I think the court cards in this deck are so powerful, and they really help, because they're rooted in myth. It really helps to understand court cards better, which I feel like court cards can be really tough to learn when you're beginning to study the tarot. Maybe not the deck I would recommend for like complete beginner, but once you've kind of learned a little bit about tarot, I think you could totally use this one. Okay, next up we have the category that I've called Uniqueness, Nerve and Talent. This is a Drag Race reference, by the way, which if you get, please leave my video a thumbs up, because I love a fellow Drag Race fan. Why did I call this category Uniqueness, Nerve and Talent? Because this particular deck, the Next World Tarot, is full of rebellion, of dismantling the patriarchy, of celebrating queerness, of celebrating uniqueness, of celebrating people who don't fit in boxes, and I absolutely adore this deck. Now, I have the small mini version, so I'm going to take you up, which I'm pretty mad about. These are the backs, by the way, and it's called the Next World Tarot, in case I didn't make that clear. You can get this deck in two versions. It comes in a mini version, which is so small. If I compare it to my Mermaid Tarot, look, it is very tiny. It's like bridge size. And then it comes in another version, pretty much the size of the Ancestral Path I showed you, I think. Well, I'm actually thinking of getting the bigger version because this artwork is so beautiful. I want to see all of it up close and personal. But for now, this is the version I've got to show you, so I'm going to show you anyway. This deck, like I said, for me is Uniqueness, Nerve and Talent, because for me it is the most diverse decks, mass market decks that I've seen, that actually depicts not just racial or ethnicity diversity or age diversity, but actually shows disability, which is something very important to me, very close to my heart, and something I never really see that well represented in mass market tarot decks. You know, in indie decks there are definitely representation of disability. In mass market it's something like we might see, maybe we see the Chariot as a wheelchair, and that's about it. And this deck actually shows you disability in many of the different cards, and done in a very beautiful way. And it depicts disability in all different variation, like, you know, not just people in wheelchair, but also people who might have chronic illnesses, who have walking sticks, who have many different things. And I think that's beautiful. As you can see, every deck has a keyword or a key sentence, and it also has an astrological reference. The base of this deck is called the Next World Tarot, so it imagines that we live in a dystopian world where, you know, it's like the end of the world and something happened, and now everyone is trying to survive and thrive in this new post-apocalyptic world. However, you know, there are some very deep hitting cards. Look at this Judgment card. This is like 2020 in a nutshell, right? And it literally came out way before 2020. I think it's so powerful. This deck does a beautiful job of depicting each of the tarot archetypes into modern day, and in a way where you have no choice but to stand up for what you believe. You have no choice but to be there for your community. You have no choice but to realize ways that you can make a difference, ways that you can stand up for people who deserve to be stand up. And this deck really shines a light on everyone who might be oppressed, who might be judged, who might be you know, cast aside in a society. And this is very much the deck that is out there to dismantle white patriarchy, and I'm so here for it. This is one of my favorite tarot decks ever. The guidebook is so healing. It is so powerful. The guidebook made me cry a few times. It's very well written. It's not huge, but it's so powerful. I believe you could learn from this deck totally, because the guidebook is so well written, and because each of the arcanas, each of the minor or major arcanas do follow loosely the RWS. So even if you have a book on the side that depicts what the card is, you still get a good idea, and I think the keywords could help you. I normally don't love decks with keywords, but I think this one, they picked the keywords really well. One of the only cards where we see chronic illness represented. If you know anything about chronic illness, you know that those spoons represent a person's energy, a person's health, and this is their own self giving that person's more spoon, telling them you need to take care of yourself, you need to love yourself, you need to realize that you are the one and only love of your life, and your body is perfect as it is. And I think it's just a beautiful representation of the lovers and a beautiful deck. Also, body size is very diverse in this deck as well, which I also very much appreciate. This deck has no bad points, honestly. The only bad point is the size, and that's my own fault, because when I ordered I didn't realize I got the mini version. So okay, next category is my deck that packs a punch. The one that, you know, I could have called it shadow work deck, but you know, shadow work is like one of those terms that people have different perspectives on what it means, etc. And I didn't want to get into that polemic because honestly I don't have time for that. So I called it deck that packs a punch, which means it will bitch slap you, tell you how it is, and make you think heavily on your shit. That's what this deck is. This deck is called the Omega Lens Tarot. These are the backs. And this deck is rooted and based around the idea of, again, post-apocalyptic world. The world has gone to shit. Hello 2020, rings a bell for anyone. The world has gone to shit, and now people are there fighting for themselves, trying to survive. Now, whereas the Next World Tarot was the deck that was rooted in healing, in celebrating people, in celebrating uniqueness, very loving vibe. This one is like, let me tell you all the darker sides of humanity. Let me show you how, and literally look at this Five of Swords. Let me show you how, when stuff goes down, humans can be totally horrible to each other. And it's not often that we see guns in tarot decks, so it's not. So swords are, I think swords are crossbows. Wands, I believe, are guns. You know, there's violence, there's people bleeding, there's dead people, there's like, the coins are actually canned food. Yeah, so this deck has dead people, it has bullet wounds, it has guns, it has violence. This is not the fluffy deck that you might want for inner child work, although, you know, you do you. It's not a fluffy deck for sure, but does it do a very good representation of all facets of humanity, and how, you know, we as human beings can really become selfish or jealous or violent when shits go down. Yes, this deck does a fantastic job at making you look at those parts of yourself, the part that are ugly, the part that you don't want to look at. So I guess in that sense, it is what people would call a shadow work deck. This deck is very, you know, Walking Dead vibes, although there are no zombies, but just the surviving people of Walking Dead, you know, with their guns, with their motorcycles and everything, and this is the vibe. One thing I don't like about this deck is that it's only white people. Other than that, I think it's a very, very solid tarot deck, especially considering its mass market. I think this is potentially one of the most unique decks I have, because it uses the theme to make you think of each card differently. Look at this Six of Swords. Six of Swords talks about moving away from your problems, but potentially carrying those problems with you and not being fully able to leave the past behind. And even though you're moving to new shores, you're still feeling slightly burdened by your past traumas. The particular depiction is someone leaving their bunker, as you can see, and you know, they had a nice bunker and everything was going good. They decided finally to come out, see what the post-apocalyptic world has going on, and by the time they're looking away, there's already someone about to like mess some shit with their bunker and take over, or you don't really know what's going on, but this person looks like they're up to no good, right? While this person is distracted. So it's like, was it time to leave your bunker? Should she have left her bunker? Should she have stayed behind but actually never come out? Like, do you come out of your fear? Is it that a good thing? Or do you listen to your fears despite of what could happen? It's just, this deck is really, it can get you to ask very psychological, deep questions, and I love that. I love the fact that it is very, literally, it packs a punch. It will bitch slap you. I'm not joking. This person is so distracted by what's going on and the illusion of a great supply that they're not realizing that there's a huge hole here where they're gonna fall and into this pit of, you don't know, monsters that have already eaten so many people. Like, so many people fell into the trap, and this person is about to be next, showing that not everything that glitter is gold, right? I believe that it comes in the it does come with a little white guidebook, and it also comes with instruction to use this deck to play it as a board game, which is why you'll see certain numbers on the top of the cards, but I haven't really tried it. I don't have time for that. I'm not interested. Overall, it's a really great deck. The backs, I don't know if I've shown you, but it looks like someone who's fenced themselves in, which I think is also so clever. And I really enjoy this one. So this is the Omega Land Tarot. I forgot to say that I believe you could learn tarot with this deck. Just know that it does veer away from traditional names and imagery a lot. So, you know, instead you should have cups, you have flasks here, you should have swords, you have crossbows, etc. So be aware that it does veer a lot away from your traditional imagery. However, the meaning of the cards are respected, and so for that reason I believe you could potentially learn with it, especially if you balance it with a more RWS clone, for example, or, you know, whatever system you're learning on. But next up, we have what I've called my deep spiritual category. So this is a kind of deck that for me, I would not be doing little readings around what should I be doing this weekend, or does Britney still like Brian, you know, that kind of vibe. This is the decks I would use for deep spiritual work, spiritual healing, communication with your guide, communication with the universe, shadow work, ancestral work, whatever it is. Just we go below the layer, right? We go below the superficial world with this one. And as I'm sure many of you have recognized from the backing, it is the Marielle Tarot. Now, I've cut mine, I have the first edition, I've cut the borders off, and I have edged mine in gold. You can't really get that edition now in your Amazon and stuff like that, I don't think, but you can find it on eBay and things like that, and you can get the second edition, which is similar. It is borderless, but some of the cards have been changed, so be aware that the decks I'm showing you now might not be the one that you get when you order on Amazon, Book a Depository or whatever, but it is similar. I think only a few cards have been changed, but I personally prefer the first edition because I appreciate all the cards here. First thing first, would I recommend this deck as a beginner's deck? Hell no! I would not recommend that you start learning tarot with this deck, because you potentially would be 1, very confused, 2, potentially a little bit scared, or 3, just feeling overwhelmed or underwhelmed or just generally whelmed. However, once you know a little bit more about tarot, I hugely recommend you getting this deck. This deck is actually a mix between RWS, Marseille, Thoth, mythology, like the creatis, Marine, that is not English, the creatress, the creator, the person who created the deck, mixed and created a whole system. It's very inspired by the Kabbalah. Like, there's just a shit ton going on in this deck. There's a lot. There's mythology, there's a lot. Everything you could potentially think magical, esoteric related, you can find in this deck, which is why I would not recommend you starting to learn tarot with this, because it would just be, like I said, you would just end up feeling very whelmed. However, as someone who knows tarot and wants to go deeper and wants a deck that will really make you think beyond your comfort zone, that will allow you to use your intuition, that will help you learn about other things, then this is the one. Honestly, it's a work of art, one of the most beautiful decks I own, indie or mass market, regardless. I love the tigers in this deck. This Nine of Wands is everything to me, and this deck and I have a very special bond, very special relationship. I got it early on in my tarot journey, and this is why I can say that you might feel well, because that was definitely my experience. So I put it away for a bit, I learned more about tarot, and then once I felt a lot more confidence, I went back to it, and suddenly it was singing, it was making a lot of sense. And ever since, this has been the deck I use for speaking to my guides and my ancestors. This is my main, like, spiritual communication with my ancestors, with the universe, etc. deck. Mass market anyway, and for indie I mostly use the Shimmering Veil Tarot, but this one is just honestly so beautiful. The guidebook is very interesting. It does explain, you know, what is going on in the card, which for some of the card you potentially want to know, because you might look at them and be like me at the beginning when you look at it and you're like, what the fuck is going on? So, you know, read the guidebook. I feel like a lot of the times we don't want to read the guidebook. For the Marielle, I would recommend you read the guidebook. It's also a great one to use just intuitively, honestly. There are nudity in this deck, like boop, so be aware. That might be an issue for some of you, but overall this deck is just absolutely stunning. Okay, next up we have what I have called the deck for my nature lovers. Now this deck is absolutely stunning. It is called the Gaian Tarot. It normally comes with huge blue borders that are disgusting. I'm gonna be completely honest. Those blue borders are some of the ugliest borders I've ever seen, so I've cut that off and I've only kept the white borders. So just so you know, if you get this deck, it might not look like this. You might have to do a little bit of trimming, but you know, if I can do it, honestly, you can do it, because I am so not talented, like I said, for deck modification, and you just have to get through the first scissor, snap, snap, and then you'll just be happily snapping away. Or you can keep the borders, you know, you do you. Anyway, this is my nature lovers deck because it is called the Gaian Tarot, like everything is in the name, right? This deck is very much rooted in nature, medicine, animal wisdom, plant medicine, the natural world. This deck has a very special place in my heart. One of the first decks I used, not the first, but you know, I got it quite early in my tarot learning journey. I would definitely recommend it if you're like starting to learn tarot. Maybe not as your first tarot deck, because it does veer away from traditional imagery that you could find in most of the books that you're learning. But as a learning deck, I would definitely recommend, especially because the guidebook is one of the best guidebook I have ever read for indie or mass market deck. There's journaling prompts, there's keywords, there's healing messages. It really, the guidebook is fantastic. I can't tell you how good this guidebook is. So to help you learn about tarot, it's a great one. This deck has a very good depiction of just everyday normal people doing normal things, but always in nature, and it has a lot of animals, a lot of plants, and it's just a very healing deck. Like, this deck is, you know, I think it's a few years old. It's definitely not one I tend to see a lot anymore. It seems to be that it was very well loved a few years back, and now I don't see anyone talk about it anymore. But for me, it's like such a solid, beautiful deck. Look at this Empress. This is another thing that maybe not for your first tarot decks, because some of the major arcana has been renamed, so maybe not your first tarot deck, but you know, as your second or third, then totally. Or if you just know that some of the major arcana card has been renamed, then you could totally, you know, make it work. The suits are element based, so you know, fire, earth, water, air, because it is, you know, nature based, so that makes sense. Look at this Hierophant. And what I love is that in most of the cards they are, like I said, plants, and I think that's just really cool as well, because you get to learn more about just tarot with this one. Honestly, this is just a really great deck for anyone who loves to be grounded, for all of my nature lovers out there. If you want a deck that has animal energy, but you don't want it to just be animals because you find that a little bit too much, then I would recommend this one, because like I said, there are animals in the scenes, but they're not the main part of the show. The main part of the show are still the humans. and it's just a really great deck. You can do so much different kind of readings with it. I think this is a great one also to read for others, especially for people who are a little bit afraid of tarot. Everyday people doing everyday thing in nature. That's beautiful. Okay, finally for my last category, we have what I have called my quirky lovers category. So this is for people who like decks that are a little bit different, that are unusual, that are definitely, you know, have that funny, quirky, punchy kind of vibe, a very like dark humor, a bit of sarcasm, a bit of quirk. This is a deck, and it is called the Zombie Tarot. Now, of course, as the Zombie Tarot suggests, it is a deck based around zombies, but not your regular kind of zombies. This deck is all around vintage 1960s kind of vibe zombies, and that already in itself is so quirky. This deck tends to be put aside a lot of the time as a Halloween deck. I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, when it's Halloween I take out, and you know, Halloween, the H's are a struggle. When it's Halloween, I see a lot of people bring out this deck because it's zombies and you know, it has a lot of quirk, etc. However, do not put this deck in a box. It will jump out of the box and it will tell you otherwise. This deck is so unique, is so sarcastic, it has a lot of dark humor, and yet it is super powerful. Look at this Queen of Cups. This deck will make you look at every single arcana in a way where you've never looked at that card before, and yet it will teach you something about tarot. It's not just a fun gimmicky deck is what I'm trying to say. I think this deck could definitely be a great shadow work deck, but also a deck for honestly any kind of reading. I will say this deck claps back. For me personally, every time I've used this deck, it was like, yeah, a clap back. For me, definitely a sarcasm, dark humor, but it's a solid deck. It's not a gimmicky deck. It does give you a very powerful reading, especially if you're willing to go below the surface, if you're willing to look at your shit, if you're willing to look at other people's shit. At least that's my personal opinion. Funnily though, I've done readings for this deck for other people, like even for my mom, and for her the readings have been very healing. For me, it was like I was being told my shit. So you might have very different experiences, and this is why I said at the beginning of the video, everyone is different, everyone has different opinion, everyone has different perspectives of the cards. For some readers, they don't even feel like different decks read differently, because for some readers I know that decks are just cards and decks don't have voices and don't have personalities. For some other readers like myself, different decks might have different personalities. You do you, everyone is different, everyone will have different opinion. This is potentially why it's interesting to watch different videos from all different type of readers so you can figure out what works for you. What I will say is, for me, this is a very solid deck. It's one that you need to take away from the Halloween box and actually give it a go all time of the year, because it will give you very powerful readings. And do I believe that this is a deck you could start reading tarot from? Yes, I think it could be totally, you know, beginner friendly. Would I choose this deck to learn tarot as my very first deck? Maybe not, because, you know, even though it does follow like meanings that are related to the traditional depiction we normally see, there are some that are very, maybe a little bit harder to understand. So maybe not as your very first tarot deck, but if you've read a few books already and you know, you've already got another tarot deck that you're learning on, and you want to expand your knowledge and look at things from a different perspective through another prism, then I think this is the one. Look at this Two of Pentacles. It's just awesome. Look at this around balance. We see this person, they've got a pet zombie. The pet zombie is balancing on their two hands. This person is making a cocktail. It's like, what the fuck? There's just so much going on. And honestly, this deck is great for intuitive readings as well, because there's just so much going on in each of the cards. I mean, and also there are pets. Do you need any more reasons to get this deck than just knowing that there are pet zombies? So definitely one I would recommend for anyone who likes something a bit quirky, a bit different, something with a personality, with a sense of humor. If you've made it this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for getting through 10 of my favorite mass market tarot decks. And as a thank you for sticking up with me, I want to throw a bonus deck. So this is a bonus category. I won't put it in the description box below, but if you've made it this far and you've seen this particular deck, then make sure to comment a star emoji in the comment box below so that I know you've watched this till now, and it will make me so happy to know. Okay, so my bonus category for everyone who sticked so far, and again, thank you so much, is the Ethereal Visions, and it is the hashtag aesthetics. Aesthetics. I'm gonna call it hashtag aesthetics. Why am I even doing hashtag with my hands? Like, I am so uncool. This is just embarrassing. This is what I've put in the, I'm gonna call it hashtag aesthetics category, because this is just a very beautiful deck. It is called the Ethereal Visions by, what is the name of the creator? Matt Hughes. And it's got gold gilding, so already that's beautiful. The cardstock is very thick, it's gorgeous. It is rooted in Art Nouveau style, so very inspired by the Art Nouveau art style, and every single card is gold edged. It has two extra cards. One is the artist and another one is a whale. Other than that, it follows very closely the RWS, so totally could be a beginner's deck, especially if you want something that is very aesthetic, very beautiful, very gorgeous, very, you know, like you put it on social media and it's gonna get a lot of likes kind of vibe. The gold makes it look very expensive. It's just a really good deck, but it's not just beautiful. Like, don't shrink that deck to just being a beautiful deck, because it's actually a really good reader. It's very clever. It does depict traditional imagery, but from a different perspective. The Seven of Cups is very interesting. On top of my head, the Wheel of Fortune, gorgeous. This deck is just, you know, it's very beautiful, but also a great reader and great depiction. So I totally would recommend this one as a beginner's deck. And look at this deck card. Oh my god. This is what tarot dreams are made of. Cannot with the beauty of this. So this is it. This is my bonus category. Definitely recommend. I have edged mine in gold, so you know it does come with white borders normally. And that's it. So thank you so much if you've made it this far. I really appreciate you. If you've not yet subscribed to my channel, make sure you do so you don't miss out any of my future videos. I post regular tarot and oracle readings that are all meant to empower you. I post tarot and oracle related videos because I love cards. And until my next video, as per usual, I am sending you lots and lots of good vibes, and keep navigating the waves of your soul. Bye!